Or think about self-healing materials embedded in the hosting substance. That hosting substance may be your computer motherboard, it may be concrete of a bridge, it may be paint against the wall. And when the hosting substance is damaged, these embedded self-healing material ruptures and they then proceed to self-heal the hosting material. New principles of operation. Then there's an increasing focus on accuracy, on higher efficiency of these new technologies. And that is a key message when we think about sustainability. And I'll demonstrate later. Finally, the last trend is the use of new materials. Hundreds of new materials come onto the market. And when we think about new materials, we have to think about, again, several sets of attributes. Let me just expand quickly. For example, there's the manufacturing considerations when we think about new materials. Among those manufacturing considerations are the placidity of the material. It's the machinability of the material, the weldability. We want to put together devices when we work with material. And we have to think about those considerations. There's the functional outputs. As I said earlier, there has to be outputs, or there have to be outputs when we think about technologies. These functional considerations include the strength of the material. It includes the thermal conductivity ability of these materials. It also includes the fatigue levels of these materials. You do not want to get into an aeroplane of which the wings fatigue levels are not known. Just to mention an example. Then of course there's the cost considerations of new materials. There's the cost of the raw material. There's the cost of processing, of transporting, of storing. We have to keep these considerations in mind, especially when we think about sustainable futures. And then finally there's operating parameters for new materials. At what heat levels do these materials operate? At what pressure levels do they operate? What are the environmental impacts of new materials? And what are the biological impacts? All of these we have to think about when we think about new materials. So let me just recap then. Technology becomes more complex, increasing range in size, increasing accuracy, increasing performance, increasing efficiencies, new principles of operation, new materials. All reasons why we should understand technological entities. But the number of technological entities make for a hierarchy of technologies. Let's therefore move ahead to what hierarchy of technology precisely is. And you should see in front of you now a very simple diagram. Material, component, assembly, system, platform, and array. And it increases in complexity. Now, the cup of coffee you hold in your hand at the moment, that cup constitutes a material, a very simple material. I'll demonstrate later, it may not be so simple, but that's the most simple form of technology you may have now. You have to have an understanding of how to drink that coffee or how to use a bottle of water. You have to understand that it is a particular device, and sometimes, of course, you have to have manners as well in how you use it. Procedures, skills, and device. Now, materials typically, when it upgrades, may form a component. If you take the specs you have on your head for those who wear specs, and you detach one of the pieces, you set with a component. It consists of a material, yet it makes for a larger unit, a larger whole. On its own, it may not operate. Together, several components make for an assembly. The set of specs you then hold in your hand is an assembly. Or the motherboard in the smartphone in front of you is an assembly. The keypad in front of you on that smartphone is an assembly. Yet the keypad, the motherboard, the screen together make for a system. Several systems together make for a platform. Typical examples in our daily lives of platforms are the ships we see, the aeroplanes we see, the cars we drive, the buses we get onto. And when we talk about the combination of platforms, we have the top of the hierarchy, which constitutes an array. An array is several platforms which function towards a common mission. Examples would be your electricity grid. It would be the 21 GPS devices up there in the air which make for the GPS data we every day receive. It may be a road network. As you can see, increasing complexity as we move up the technology hierarchy. Let me share with you two examples which shows how this hierarchy in fact manifests today. As an example of a material, there's graphene, a carbon material or carbon-based material isolated barely 10 years ago, but known for its exceptional electricity conductivity and its exceptional mechanical attributes. Among those mechanical attributes is its exceptional strength. It could withstand 50,000 times its own weight. It sports an excellent optical transparency. It helps to enhance the attributes of the host material or the host substance in which you may embed graphene. And what do we do typically with graphene? Two examples of how as a material it today manifests. There's graphene dioxide membranes, which is known for the fact that it allows water vapor through, but is or remains impenetrable to other liquids and gases, which creates wonderful new opportunities for the generation of biofuels. Then graphene, given that it has excellent electrical conductivity, is known for the fact that whereas silicon, for example, which is the other familiar material we everyday use in our computer chips and in solar cells, for example, whereas silicon typically, for every photon it receives from the sun, creates only one current driving electron. Graphene creates multiple instances of current driving electrons. Just think about the fact that this attribute on its own enhances the efficiency of solar cells multiple times. It also creates new possibilities for graphene transistors for our computers. I demonstrated in this instance a simple material. On the other hand, an array, you have an array of, for example, unmanned aerial vehicles. They are known in conflict zones for indiscriminately sometimes killing people. They create major ethical issues. Yet they may also be a set of robots. And we know that already in 2005, Cornell University in the USA created a self-replicating robot. This robot had the ability to memorize and to learn about itself. It therefore had the ability to self-improve, which brings visions of a robot BIM, which may, through its ability to outsmart people, create an unsustainable future. Now that again brings to mind a very interesting set of robotic laws, those of Isaac Asimov. He wrote and penned them down already in 1941. And the first law was that robots shouldn't ever harm human beings, neither by their action nor by their inaction. The second law was that robots should always obey human beings unless it conflicts with the first law. And the third law was that robots should always aimed towards self-preservation, unless, of course, it conflicts with the first two laws. But an array of robots aiming towards the same objective is closer in the future than we think. I want to move on now. I wanted to demonstrate with this concept to you how complex technologies in fact are, and that we shouldn't only think about computers when we think about technology, not about the coffee cup in front of us or the car. There's a range of technologies, there's a hierarchy of technologies which helps us to discern the unique features of every kind, every class of technology. I'm moving on now to the technosphere. That technosphere has certain economic attributes. And that economic attributes impact upon the technology landscape, of course, certainly so on the economic landscape as well. And we do have to have a certain level of technological literacy to understand what those techno-economic attributes are. Let me demonstrate by focusing on the graph at the bottom of the slide. Firstly, there are inventions. Inventions become commercialized, and because of uptake of those commercial entities or those technological entities, you, for example, take up a number of computers or robots and you automate your plant, and suddenly you have a higher level of productivity and you push into the market more of your end product. Higher productivity, increasing returns on the uptake of technology which then follows, and higher returns, of course. Yet, we know that inventive people don't sit still. They are in Silicon Valley, they are in Johannesburg, Cape Town, in London, in Tokyo, in Shanghai, everywhere are inventive people. They do not sit still. They want to take out the current technology in the marketplace with their inventions. And what typically happens is what Joseph Schumpeter described around the 50s of the previous century as creative destruction. The new technology comes into the marketplace. There's firstly a slow uptake, then a quicker uptake, and it takes out the old technology. Now there's plenty of examples of those. You could just think about the history of the car, the history of the airplane, the history of the computer in front of you, or the cell phone or the smartphone, the history of food and quick foods which we see every day on the shelves. When this happens, you have cyclical downturns and cyclical upturns in the economy. And a certain Carlota Perez, economist who has an acute knowledge of the history of technology, described these cycles as techno-economic revolutions. And she then went ahead and identified 5 such techno-economic revolutions since the Industrial Revolution. That one, 1789 roundabout, represented, of course, the mechanization of the cotton industry. 50, 60, 70 years later, there were steam and railways. And suddenly, the mechanization process sped up, and it took out those which didn't work with steam, all those industries which didn't work with steam. Railways, of course, replaced ox carts, and so it went on. That helped, or that happened together with the crash in the marketplace, because suddenly those predominant technologies of the previous cycle you invested in lost all their value. And the boom that was in the market changed into a crash. And 60, 70 years later, there was electricity, there were heavy manufacturing plants, and there was steel, which followed. Yet another techno-economic revolution followed. Then, more familiar, 1910 roundabout, oil production of all the automobile and mass production a la Henry Ford followed. Then in our lifetime came round about 1970, a techno-economic revolution of which we currently receive the benefits of course, that is ICT. ICT still is just beyond the market crash of the 2000s, and therefore there's a next cycle now that starts to erupt, and that cycle still has ICT as a fundamental, but it also involves biological technologies, which has of course organic matter as a substance, and it has an advanced form of ICT, so it's advanced computations. You wouldn't necessarily see a computer, you would have an embedded chip, for example. It involves nanotechnologies, it involves also cognitive technologies. Cognitive technologies where the distinction between humans and technology disappears. Those are cognitive technologies. The convergence of nano, bio, ICT and cognitive makes for a next revolution. And we have to carefully look at its attributes, because we would want to invest in those technologies as they appear on the technological horizon. And we would need to understand them in order to invest in the right technologies that contribute towards a sustainable future. And let me just for now explain that by that sustainable future, of course, I involve the shareholder, I involve environmental stakeholders, and I involve societal stakeholders. I want to deviate now slightly and focus on inventions and innovations, since they deserve a few seconds of our attention. So the next slide then, I want to show to you what the relationship is between innovations and inventions. Every invention goes through a set of technology readiness levels. These technology readiness levels together constitute the technology life cycle. Now note that the technology life cycle stretches from concept to retirement. That is what I'd like to call cradle to grave. But there's a new notion, it's cradle to cradle. We must reuse our materials. I'll get to that a little bit later again. Concept, development, patent, prototype, test, production, at least of product or process or technological entity, which of course goes to market, and then retirement. But where do we know and how should we know about concepts and how concepts are developed? When should we know whether a patent is patented or not? And of course, here I need to deviate from a deviation, and that is typically industries do not believe in open innovation ecosystems. That is yet another concept which I wouldn't like to share with you now, but we can go into that either afterwards or in follow-ups. Let's just for now suffice with the notion that companies want to keep proprietary their intellectual property, so they do patents. So, if you are really technologically literate, you would know how to track concepts and how to track how these concepts are developed. You would understand that an invention is linking conceptually and physically an end purpose with some exploitable objectives. You see a solution forming in front of you if you are an inventor. You see a problem and you see a solution, and you then conceptually design and physically manifest that design. That is concept to development. And if you are clever, of course, you would then search for an angel investor or a venture capitalist to invest and to do an investment analysis of the unique attributes of your concept as it is now designed on paper in front of you. Your investment analyst now wants to understand what are the unique attributes of this technology in front of me. How does it use new materials? What is the new principle of operation which it brings to market? What are the unique technology performance metrics which makes of this concept a breakthrough technology? Should I acquire rights on this patent? Should I become a co-investor? Is it possible to take to market this patent when it becomes a prototype and when it is tested and when it is ready to go to market? Is it possible to do so quicker than my competition will do? And what are the environmental and societal impacts, as I said earlier, of the materials used, of the end result of this technology when it is in operation and when I want to retire? I'll expand on these notions a little bit later again. With these, I simply want to demonstrate to you that when we think about the commercialization of inventions, we think about innovations. And we have to be acutely aware of what the life cycle phases are, of the concepts which are formed in the minds of inventors. This, of course, says something about relationships as well. It says we should know inventors. We must know where they are. We must carefully track what they do. We should build relationships with them. Technology management and technological literacy, after all, are human processes. They are social processes. They are not engineering processes. Engineers may be aware of them as well, and the quicker the better. But these are for business science experts. They are for managers. They are for analysts out there in the marketplace. They are for common people who make technology decisions. And we shouldn't think about these technologies as cold and clinical notions which lie apart from our futures. Indeed, they make our future, and we have to think carefully about what they are, what they do, what the outcomes are, what the impacts are when we make decisions about them. So, I want to move ahead to a next concept. Now that we understand that technological entities make for hierarchies of technologies, and now that we understand that hierarchies of technologies make for a technosphere with techno-economic attributes, and now that we understand what the role of inventions versus innovations in the marketplace is, let's move ahead to a very interesting notion, and that is the functionality grid. I want to share now with you a simple 9-cell matrix which may help you to understand technology better. Firstly, let's focus on the vertical axis: matter, energy, and information. I want to tell you that represents a technological trinity. See in your mind's eye a triangle: matter, energy, information. Think about holism. Think about it that matter and energy are the two key ingredients out there in the cosmos, and of course information about matter and energy. Energy represents life, and information represents also personalities, of course, as I said earlier. The whole consists about matter, energy, and information. Nothing exists outside that. Of course, if you are religious, you may differ with me, and I certainly understand that. For technology futures and for sustainable futures, let's for a moment leave aside religious notions and just think about the whole that consists of matter, energy, and information. Then, when we think about the horizontal axis, we see process, transport, and store. Processing, transporting, and storage are represented by those three terms there. And when we juxtapose matter, energy, and information against process, transport, and store, we see the 9 pathways towards technological perfection. What do I mean by that? I simply say by that there's nothing in the industrial whole that exists outside these 9 pathways. nothing can be done other than these 9 pathways towards technological perfection. And by that I simply mean towards an efficient and sustainable future. Let me demonstrate further. When we use this 9-cell matrix, which is known as the functionality grid, to classify technology, to understand them, and to learn about them, we first think about what is the physical reality. Is it matter, energy, and or information? And what is the predominant transformative process which now happens with this matter, energy, and or information? So we have the technology in front of us. We have graphene dioxide membranes in front of us. We read about it. And we should now think, okay, what is the physical substance? The physical substance is, for example, water. And what is the key transformative process? Well, it processes water to generate biodiesel, for example. So it transforms substances. That is the main outcome. A technology which transforms substances. But why? And so what? Well, it transforms substances more efficiently for the same or less input. So less water is needed to create a biodiesel. And I generate now, or I demonstrate with a very simple example. That E. coli bacterium I referred to earlier, which digests sugars to generate energy, may transform a substance and generate energy. We didn't know what it was. When we ask ourselves, so what is the physical reality? We said, well, it is a sugar. That is matter. What does this bacterium do? Well, it transforms this matter into energy. And why? And so what? Well, it does so quicker and it does so cheaper than it costs to produce oil, as a counter example. So when business managers have to make technology choices, they should use this 9-cell matrix just to become conversant with the basic tenets of the technology they are confronted with. They should ask, what is the physical reality? What is the predominant transformative process? And what is the technology pathway that follows? They shouldn't now act like they are engineers. They should now hire technology analysts. And here I have self-interest, of course. I am one of those. But they need not hire me. They could hire anyone else to please investigate this technology further and to assess what its unique technology performance metrics are, which would discern it from its competitive brothers and siblings in the marketplace. Also, for sustainable futures, technology decision makers should ask themselves, so how do I use this matrix to think new about my technology decisions? Let me demonstrate. When we have technologies which either process, transport, and or store matter, we should ask ourselves, does this technology reuse and recycle matter? Does it use less biomass? Does it use less materials? Does it use less water to process and or transport and or store whatever it does to generate its outcomes? We should also ask, is there perhaps a case to be made out that this technology that I'm confronted with uses the waste of a previous cycle to produce its outcome? For example, the steel that was reprocessed from cars that were broken down and that were deconstructed. This steel and this technology now compresses it into a new form to create new technological entities. We should ask that question. If we want to think sustainably, we should ask that question. We should also ask ourselves that, is it more efficient is the same or less material input used to generate the outcome? Does it transport quicker? Is information transported quicker with fiber than with copper, to mention an old example? Is information stored in the new chip in a smaller footprint than it was when they were in files, in rooms and rooms of files? Yes, of course it is. And we shouldn't therefore strive towards old filing systems unless the law says so. And the law, as you know, is typically 5 or 10 years behind technological progress. Finally, we should ask the question, shouldn't we have an information-based business instead of a matter or energy-based business? Let me demonstrate. Should I transport information in a parcel or with bits and bytes? Should I sell vinyl records or should I sell iTunes? Should I sell e-books or should I sell a paper book? Again, let me declare my interest. I don't prefer paper books, but I'd like to know and to see that that paper book is offset with a forest somewhere that is managed sustainably. That creates jobs, it creates more work for people that wouldn't have work in less economically progressed countries. By that I mean, of course, less developed countries. And we shouldn't typically think that paper or this paper is more sustainable. So yes, indeed, there's a good future, and 80% of the New York Stock Exchange, in fact, deals with intangible outcomes. We should ask, therefore, still, is my business an information-based business, and does it create more sustainable futures? I want to move on. Let's just suffice with the concluding message about the functionality grid, that it is concise, it's comprehensive, and it may help you to understand the basic tenets of technology better if you want to create sustainable futures. And indeed, this 9-cell matrix is used across the world in strategic technology analysis, in classrooms, and in businesses which classify and understand technologies better with the tools that it presents. But for those technologies which we do choose when we then have used this 9-cell matrix, we have to understand two things about these technologies. Firstly, we have to understand that the cost of technologies are relative. For example, the environmental cost of technologies may not always be added up to the economic cost of the immediately visible analysis we have in front of us. Typically, when we invest at the concept level in a technology, we may not know at all what the environmental cost will be. And of course, it is still when the technology is cheapest, as you will see at inflection point 1. The technology is very cheap until there, but as soon as it starts to run through the developmental phase, it becomes a patent, its cost increases. So we have to have the technology radar screen as a tool set. We have to understand we have to have a certain level of technological intelligence, and we have to pursue a set of first order information needs, as I related earlier, to understand who of our inventors have what and which concepts now to the marketplace. We have then to pursue immediately the second order information needs. What are the costs of those concepts? What are the costs of developing those concepts into patents? Because you want to invest as early as possible. But at inflection point 2, you want to understand that from retirement to abandonment and to deconstruction, if deconstruction follows, there is a huge potential environmental cost which we have to be certain about when we invest. And although it is very fuzzy at concept stage, we have to apply our minds at what it potentially could be. And we have to find a proxy for those costs. So what I want to say with this, that when we understand technological entities, when we know where they fit into the technological hierarchy, and we know and we understand what the economic contribution of these technological entities may be, and we want to invest in them, when we understand what the inventive and innovative dynamics are of these technologies, we have also to have the technology intelligence strategy, and we have to have people who react to the signals which comes from the technological horizon. People who understand what those signals are and who process those signals so that they can be taken to board level decision making. And we then should be able to say, I should invest in that or that or that technology because it represents these new operating principles. It represents these new key technology performance metrics. These metrics make it a breakthrough technology. I have analyzed the basic tenets of these new technologies with my functionality grid. And these are the basic tenets. These are the physical realities. These are the transformative or the predominant transformative processes. And these are the technology pathways created by these new technologies. This is what this technology does. Consider to invest in it. Of course, technology intelligence strategies again require a certain level of expertise. That is where you should hire your technology analysts, of course. Let me move on to the final slide. When we have a level of technological literacy thanks to all these concepts that I've shared with you, we should understand that there will be strategic inflection points where we have to change our technologies. We have to have a certain asset register of the technologies in our organization, all the technologies in our investment portfolio. We have to understand that each of those technologies measures up on the strategic value scale versus the sustainability value scale. We have to understand that some of those technologies will be cash cows, yet they may be unsustainable. We also have to understand that there may be cash cows which are sustainable. They have to be promoted at all costs. Where they are unsustainable and they are cash cows, we have to offset the effects. For example, with similar and equal investments in sustainability projects elsewhere. We have to declare those so that our shareholders and that our environmental and societal stakeholders understand what our interests are in technologies which are cash cows but which are unsustainable. Of course, those same stakeholders should also understand where we have sustainable technologies which are cash cows, because they should benefit by those technologies as well. And where strategic inflection point happens, or happen, where strategic dissonance appear on the horizon, we should reformulate our technology strategies. We should respond to our technology intelligence signals. We should invest as early as possible in sustainable technologies, not only for financial prosperity, but also for societal and environmental prosperity. And we should draw up for ourselves sustainability indexes, technology sustainability indexes, to understand which of the technologies on our technology portfolios or in our organizations or in our personal investment portfolios are sustainable and which not. I'd like to conclude. Now that we have had a short overview of the basic tenets of technology, I'd like to encourage you to think about these concepts. 45 minutes, of course, are not enough to share to any depth any of these concepts with you. All I wanted to do is to show to you that technology isn't only ICT, and that we in fact suffer technology impotence if we didn't know what I shared with you today. Because I'm not an engineer, yet I could be taught what I shared with you today. And it wasn't so difficult. We should give consideration to a systematic process when we have higher levels of technological literacy to discern between those technologies which are sustainable, those investments, those concepts, those prototypes, those patents, which predict a sustainable future, and deviations. We should reject technologies which are deviations, but we should do so in consultation with all stakeholders. I thank you for listening. Questions very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ferdie, for a really interesting presentation. I'm really sorry for everyone that's tuned into this webinar. We have had some technical issues throughout, but I'm pleased to say that Ferdie has provided us with his PowerPoint presentation, which we will email to all of you after this webinar. And also, if you have any questions, if you send them through as well, Ferdie, I'm sure we'll be happy to address those. Thank you again for joining us on the webinar. Thanks to Ferdie Lochner for delivering a really insightful webinar on technological literacy for sustainable technologies. And thank you to Brigitte Rodija, our Global Ambassador, for selecting this webinar for our members. We have many webinars coming up. We've got on the 6th of August, 5 advanced interview techniques demystified by employers, which is 1 till 2 p.m. British summer time, and we've also got another Global Connections webinar on the 14th of August between 1 till 2 p.m. So we look forward to you tuning in then to tuning into the webinars. Thank you very much, and goodbye all.
Bye-bye.